we got to spend some back porch time this week. Anybody else spend time outside this week? Oh, it was so nice. So nice. Okay, so we're going to kick it off with something a little bit different. We're going to do an icebreaker question. And we're going to get to know each other a little bit. So I want you to find somebody near you. And the opening question for today is, in your life right now, which person of the Trinity, the Father, Son, or Holy Spirit, are you drawn to or relate best with lately in this season, and why? So find someone near you. All you introverts are like, it'll be okay, I promise. We'll give you a few minutes to discuss. Dan, do you have that slide with the question up there so that people know? There you go. All right, 30 seconds. Teacher's pet, right? All right, we're wrapping up here. As we're wrapping up, anyone care to share what they shared with their partner? Of who you relate to best in this season? Oh, Charlotte.
I think right now I relate to the Holy Spirit more because I'm seeing more of Him. I'm hearing more of Him. I just feel, like I said, last weekend my chains are gone. I've been set free. And I think this goes back to the revival of just, really seeing what the Lord can do. So I think right now it's just more Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Charlotte. Anybody else care to share? You don't necessarily have to come up. You could just share from where you're at if you want. Oh. Anybody else? All right. So every once in a while, our spiritual directors ask us this question, and it's actually a really good one to think and talk about every so often, because there's so many aspects of God that ebb and flow depending on the season that we're in, and so I think it's really cool to kind of just reflect on that every now and then. Did any of you guys see our new car out there, by the way? Yeah, it's the Honda Pilot. So we finally found a new car. We're so excited. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, our van kind of spontaneously combusted in the parking lot a few weeks ago. We've been trying to find a car. And the interesting thing is that after our van caught on fire, I had this really fun dream. And I think it was partly because I was just thinking about cars before I fell asleep. And I used to have this client who was very well off and had the most gorgeous Mercedes-Benz SUV. I mean, I've never, in my life, would even consider driving a Mercedes-Benz, but she wanted me to drive everywhere. So I found every excuse, like, hey, do you need some milk? Do you need some eggs? Do you want me to go walk your horse for you? Like, every day we were out, I got to drive this Mercedes-Benz. The smoothest ride I have ever been in my life. Maybe next to the Balters Land Rover, which they allowed us to use for last weekend. But it was smooth, and I was thinking about this before I fell asleep a few weeks ago. And the dream that I had was the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit were getting ready for me this beautiful black Mercedes-Benz. The Father was working under the hood, like salt and pepper hair, and Jesus was on the outside kind of polishing it up, and then the Holy Spirit was on the inside tending to the leather, and she had this cute little mom bun and her little jogger pants on. And it was so awesome, but as I approached the vehicle, they all three simultaneously let out this big celebratory cry, like, hey, she's here! Like, wow, they're preparing something for me. And I woke up and I was so emotional at the thought of them delighting in me so much. And the thought that they're preparing something far beyond what I could ever ask or imagine. Now, obviously, I don't think it was literal. I mean, I wouldn't complain if it was literal, let me tell you. But obviously, we're driving a Honda Pilot now. So I think it was like in this next season that he has us in, both personally and for a church, that he is preparing something extravagant, his extravagant love for us, and he delights in that. All three of them delight in that. And so I was so excited, super excited to dive into this series. A couple of years ago, I really sensed the Holy Spirit inviting me to know him and her, not only as this force or as a spirit, but also as a person. So both Matt and I have been on this journey of kind of asking what that looks like. And so that's part of the reason we're doing this series. And you're going to hear bits and pieces here and there of who Holy Spirit is. But I just want to give a really quick basic baseline to kind of jump off of. And so who is Holy Spirit? So we're just going to do this basic overview to get us started. The Holy Spirit is God and the third person of the Trinity. We believe that the Father is God, that Jesus is God, and Holy Spirit is God. In 2 Corinthians 3:16 through 18, it says, "But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and when the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. So 3 in 1, fully God, but fully individual as well. So have you ever tried to explain to someone a deeply profound experience that you've had, and no matter how hard you try, or what imagery you use to describe what you felt, that they just didn't get it? That's what describing the Holy Spirit is like. He doesn't want us to only understand him with our minds, but also with our hearts and our wills. He wants to be experienced and known by us, and us by him. In John 14:26, it says, "But the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of everything I have said to you." In 1 Corinthians 2:9 and 10, "However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. These are the things God has revealed to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God." There's a couple of things that are worth mentioning, and you knew that I wouldn't do a sermon without some kind of statistic, right? Even though I am not a numbers person. But a couple of things worth mentioning is in the Old Testament, the Spirit is mentioned at least 88 times across 23 books and is often referred to as the Spirit of God. In the New Testament, the Spirit is mentioned at least 264 times, with 60 of those references found in the Gospels. So there you go, Scott. In the Gospels, the Holy Spirit is mentioned the most. In the New Testament, the Holy Spirit is often referred to as Pneuma, which is the title of this series. And it's a Greek, gender-neutral term meaning spirit, breath of life, or air in motion. This is where we get those words that have to do with breath, like pneumonia or pulmonology. The study of the Holy Spirit is actually called pneumatology. And I think this is so fun and timely because it was either like the first or second night of the revival last week when Lisa talked about this, the inhale and exhale of the breath of God. And she really had no idea what we were going to be speaking on in the next week. So I think that's so fun. I love how the Lord brings that all together. But the equivalent to this in the Old Testament is the Hebrew term Ruach. Everyone say Ruach. Ruach. Which is the first time the Holy Spirit is mentioned and what we're going to cover today. Ruach sometimes is mentioned in the form of Ruah, and it's Hebrew, and it's actually a feminine term, meaning about the same thing, the breath, the wind of God, air in motion. Genesis 1 and 2 is where we're going to hang out today. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. So we're going to break this down a little bit further in the Hebrew. You guys ready for this? All right. All right, so in the beginning, God. That term is Elohim. And it's plural, and I love that we sang the song that we did of mighty, majestic, great, power, and it's in a plural term. So essentially, it was talking about the Trinity in the very beginning, created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless, and the Hebrew words for that was waste, like a wasteland, empty, but also confused, chaos, useless, and empty, void, chaos, desolate, darkness, was black, gloom, despair, terror, ignorance, which I found really interesting. So it wasn't just the words describing like the physical thing, but also everything, the underlying spiritual stuff that was going on as well. And that was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, everyone say Ruach Elohim, was hovering, which means brooding, to tremble and to shake over the waters. I don't know about you, but I've read this passage before. And I used to think, oh, the Spirit's kind of like dancing over the dark waters, like some kind of ballerina, fluttering and floating and just waiting for the right time to be released for creation. But the word for hovering here means it's a deeper, more aggressive thing. It means to brood, to tremble, to shake. And we often think of brooding almost as like an uneasiness or something that we can't shake our minds from, right? You think about broody hens, like you guys know what a brooding hen is. And they could be a little bit grumpy, and they only have one thing on their mind, is protecting those eggs at any cost. Brooding for us on any one thing for any length of time starts to kind of affect our whole being and tends to consume us. There's that intensity that's usually associated with it. Moving on to verses 3 and 4, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And the Hebrew for that was bright daylight, but also a happy attitude as a result from the relief of trouble, which I found really interesting. God saw that the light was good, pleasing, desirable, beautiful, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. This short passage says so much about who God and Holy Spirit is, doesn't it? So what lessons are in it for us as we learn about the Ruach Elohim, the breath of God that hovered? Well, one, he always was, always is, and always will be. In the beginning, God. The 3-in-1. Majestic, powerful. Always here. He does not abandon us. No matter how bad things get, how overwhelming, how evil it may seem out there in the world, his presence has never left the earth. And I think someone needs to hear this today. He doesn't abandon his creation. He doesn't abandon his creation. If he doesn't abandon the lilies or the sparrows or the blades of grass outside that door, he won't abandon you. Number 2, he hovers over the deep, formless voids and speaks life and light. Has anyone ever had times in their life where you or the situation felt like that deep, formless void? A wasteland, empty, chaotic, dark, confusing, maybe terrified, maybe ignorant. I think we all have at one time or another, right? And maybe you're at that point now. But if not, I can guarantee you there's somebody in your sphere of influence who is. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. When those thoughts or situations rise to the surface like that, it's a sign of a deeper issue, many times unbeknown to us. And sometimes it may feel like that gentle, fluttering butterfly, like, oh, he's pointing this out and that out. Kind of like what I mentioned in the Spirit before. But more often than not, those deeper things feel like the shaking and the trembling, like your whole world is kind of turned upside down, right? And when those great shakedowns happen, it doesn't always feel too good, does it? We've kind of seen this in the church worldwide. We've seen this in politics and stuff lately as well. We tend to want to find the cause or dismiss it as simply the enemy, and sometimes that is true. But sometimes it all comes to the surface so that Ruach Elohim can bring healing and light to those deeper things behind it. And Daniel, while Daniel was interpreting the dream for the king, he says in verse 2:22, he reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. As deep and dark as it may seem, he's there, hovering, brooding like a mother hen, protecting the life that is about to come and waiting for the words of life and light to be released into that scenario. And here's the thing, guys. We as co-heirs of Christ, we also have that confidence and authority to declare, let there be light. Let your kingdom come in any given situation. We'll learn a little bit more about this next week, but because his very breath is in us with every inhale and exhale, every word spoken, every song sung, is the likeness of him and his love and healing being released in the earth. And when it is, then light is separate from the dark. He looks on it and he says, it is good. Dan, if you wanted to come up. We could stand in what he declares is good for us. That's point number 3, it is good. So the times when we question that healing, he says, it is good. When we doubt his work in us, he looks on us and says, it is good. When others doubt or question his work in us, he says, no, I say it is good. He looks at you no longer as one that is formless or chaotic or empty, but as a beloved creation filled with his light. One that he will never abandon. And as he holds your face in his hands and declares over you like the Creator does over his creation, it is good, it is good. So we're going to do communion today. That's how we're going to close. And as we do, logistically, real quick, you don't have to be a member of the church to receive communion. Open table, so feel free to come up. And if you don't want to come up, that's cool too. But take the bread and take the cup and take it back to your seat with you. But as we take communion this morning, and as you take the elements back to your seat, I want you to ask this question or this prayer. Ruach Elohim, where do you want to breathe life into today? What parts feel empty, feel dark, feel chaotic? And what do you want to say? How do you want to breathe life into that? And so, Lord, as we come before you, Ruach, Elohim, we say, come and breathe. We invite you, hovering Spirit. To breathe your life, breathe your light. As we remember and honor you. So feel free to come up.